Hello and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry, and I once interviewed at HP's headquarters by their director of marketing, and in the window behind him, the entire interview were two hawks furiously making babies, but when I couldn't contain myself any longer and told him, they conveniently flew away, and it was extremely awkward after that. Safe to say I didn't get that job. Today I'm chatting with a fantastic filmmaker, a faculty of Sheridan College's animation program, the author of the go-to book on stop-motion filmmaking, and the person who personally pushed me to get back into stop-motion, Chris Walsh. In our chat, he shares what he's been up to since, well, the last time we chatted, which was episode 41, which was just over 2 years ago, almost to this day, as well as the stop-motion short film he produced about a skeleton assassin who tries to mend his broken heart. But first, this episode is sponsored by Hue, makers of colorful plug-and-play cameras for learning, work, and play. Originally designed for teachers, Hue cameras can also be used for creative activities such as capturing hand-drawn pencil tests and shooting behind-the-scenes footage, time-lapse videos, and stop-motion animation, of course. Their cameras have flexible, posable necks, manual focus controls, and they are compatible with Dragonframe, OBS, Twitch, Zoom, and many other camera apps. Visit huehd.com to learn more and follow at Hue Cameras on social media for news, fun, and giveaways. And get 10% off any Hue product from huehd.com with the code 10TerryAIP. And all of those details are in the description of this chat, so please go check them out. And now, without further ado, let's jump in. Hi, Chris. How are you doing? Thanks for coming on the chat.
Hello, Terry.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. Awesome to see you.
You're one of the few people who's, I think only one other person has come on twice. And you are the second person. And the first time we chatted about, being a professor and coordinator at Sheridan College, the book on how to animate in stop motion and do everything in stop motion that you wrote. And now we're chatting about a amazing 8-minute and I think 39-second or something short film that you produced during COVID that's finally out. And, I'm wondering, maybe you can start by giving a little synopsis of this little film that you produced, and then we'll chat all about it.
Sure. Yeah, the film's called Orchid, and it's the story of a hitman, a skeleton hitman.
Yes.
If that makes any sense. Yeah, it's a skeleton hitman in a noir world that also has some sci-fi elements, but the hitman is looking for I guess a lost love, trying to find a lost love by any means necessary, and he has a conscience as well, and so the film mixes all kinds of stuff. It's a noir film. There's some comedy in it. There's some sci-fi. There's some horror. I tried to throw all kinds of stuff that I enjoy into a short film, and yeah. So that's a synopsis. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think people should just watch the films and know what's going on. But you certainly packed a lot of story elements into an 8-minute film, and it's a little bit atypical than kind of the classic. I mean, there's still like the hero's journey, whatever, but in short films we usually follow a character and they have their total arc and everything. But you've gone kind of a little different route, and you're mixing. There's kind of elements of depression and substance use and the hitman and everything. So where did this story come from, and why did you want to tell it, and why did you choose stop motion specifically?
Well, I chose stop motion because that's really my thing, and big time. And by that I mean it's really the type of motion picture storytelling that I've really specialized in over a lot of years now. Partly because in stop motion I can tell stories like live action is very exciting. It's a fantastic place, but man, can it get expensive.
Yeah.
And it can be very daunting. And so many years ago, I made some realizations. If I want to tell stories and if I want to tell my own motion picture stories, And if I want to have, say, elements of fantasy and world building and fantastical things, stop motion is really the great way to do that. I think of a Lee Hardcastle quote. He's got a great quote where he's another stop motion guy that does some amazing claymation,
Yeah.
and his motto is he wanted to be the next Steven Spielberg, and stop motion was the way for him to do that. To bring movie ideas to life. So that's me in stop motion, and so that's why I would choose it. As far as where the story comes from, I have to say, like for a lot of years, I've had sort of a visual in my head that I've always hoped I could bring to the screen, and it was as weirdly specific as this sounds. It's a wide shot of skeletons in a lab, like in a mad scientist's lab. I at the time didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what was going to be happening in the scene or in the story, but I wanted to see that. I could see it in my imagination, and I just as other projects have come and gone, and as time's kind of gone onward, it's just one of those things. You have a visual, and you hope that that'll come to life. And so when the time came to start to develop a story for another short stop motion film, I really grabbed onto that central visual thing. And it's like, for me, I wanted to make something that I would want to watch. And I couldn't get that image of skeletons in a mad lab. It just started to mix so many sort of genre stuff together for me that I really enjoyed, and so many fun aspects of movies that I figured if I had have that much fun looking at that, then I'd probably have a lot of fun making it as well. So that's also what kind of led me as I developed the story. I just kept working away, asking myself, "Do I want to watch this?" And if the answer was yes, and if it worked like at a story level in different ways, I didn't just try to throw everything into a story. But if it kept seeming like it was a story that would keep my attention and would keep me wanting to find out what would happen next, then that really helped lead me onward in the story. So yeah, there's some addiction stuff in there, but there's also some romance, and there's lost love, and it's bittersweet, and then it's also kind of slapsticky as well. So yep, I threw a lot of stuff at it and had a lot of fun doing it.
Totally. Yeah. I have a lot of questions on what you just said. First of all, Lee Hardcastle, I love his work. That's hilarious. The quote is, I wanted to be Steven Spielberg, so I made my own movies. I relate to that a lot, but I feel like when you choose stop motion, you don't end up becoming Steven Spielberg. You just end up doing more stop motion over time.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you end up scratching this itch of, is the picture of skeletons in a lab gone after making this short film now?
No, skeletons are super cool. There's
Wait,
just like,
no. So you still want to make another film about skeletons in a lab? Is this
oh, I don't know if they'll be in a lab, but there's no way you're gonna ever not have cool skeletons. I just think it just never ends. Skeletons are just always cool.
okay? I'm gonna take
So,
this quote
yeah.
from this chat, and it'll become there's no way you're not ever gonna have cool skeletons.
They just look so cool, and they
Yeah,
connect, like audiences can look at them. They immediately look at, Ray Harryhausen's stuff with his
totally. Yeah,
skeletons, his sword fights with skeletons. In how many stop motion projects, Jack Skellington, Nightmare Before Christmas. It just goes on. There's so many stop motion skeletons, but
yeah,
I think people identify with them, and they sort of always make us think about mortality, but also you can give them a lot of characterization as well, and we can actually connect with them because they kind of are us, right? Everybody's got a skeleton inside them.
totally. Yeah, stop motion skeletons is almost like a trope. I'm wondering though. Okay, so you've been teaching at Sheridan for quite a few years and on a variety of subjects. When I was there, you did kind of introduction to, I think, storyboarding and animation history, and we had tests on the basic principles of animation, etc. Did all of that help you in creating this film? Because you've got a solid story. Your character design is like, I absolutely love the skeletons. They're all very unique and they all fit together. The cinematography is all there, the music, etc. Did you kind of hone all of the things that you kind of learned in teaching over the years to put it into this film, or did you like yourself, or did you consult, perhaps you consulted like a story professor, or your connections from being a professor for so long to make this film into what you wanted it to be?
That's a good question for someone that has been teaching for as long as I have. So I'm going on into my 16 years now, I guess, full time as a teacher. All the while still making my own stuff and
Yeah.
making commercial work as well, as I'm able to and when the opportunity's there. But I think the teaching really has informed my own filmmaking for sure, because you hone things as a teacher over the years that sort of rise up as being really important, and then the next year you refine your lectures more, and the really important things kind of crystallize over time in a good way, I think, into really important essentials that you tend to focus on as a teacher. And so for sure, I draw on that then as I turn to my own stuff, because I believe it to be true, right? If I have to be passionate and sell it to students and have evidence for students about why something is correct or right or a way to think about something, then I'm proving it for myself for real. So it sort of then is something that can inspire me, and I turn to as I develop a story, for example, for sure. So with students, I always try to emphasize, some really important essentials, especially like what I do lectures for first year students in story, and some essentials of story that are always there. Characters, a strong central character, and your character needs to have things like objectives, right? And motivations, and there needs to be obstacles. These are the things I think we really take for granted, but I think sometimes we take them so much for granted, we maybe think that they don't matter, or we think that they're just going to somehow magically appear in our stories. And so for me, as I developed this story, yeah, I was being really conscious of those essentials. And I really wanted the story to work in sort of a classic way um, where it felt as though characters were wanting things, characters were trying to achieve things, and then characters were achieving them or were not, and then there were consequences. So all the characters in the film, if you track them through, say from the I'm being teacher guy now, I know, but look at the essentials of storytelling, right? And what characters need and what they want and objectives. That's really baked into the film big time. I really tried to honor those essentials of storytelling.
So are you able to be specific about how you bake a strong element of character into the film?
And well, an element of character, it can be all kinds of things. So in terms of characterization, like if you want to talk about animation, there's lots of moments then, perhaps I'm not thinking them through as the writer, but I know as the animator, when the time comes, going from my really simple storyboards, I'll maybe storyboard some really simple character moments. And then I know as the animator, I'm going to flesh that out a bit more. So, for example, the central character, I either call him the hero or the assassin or whatever you like to call him.
Yeah.
He has some moments, especially with the evil scientist, where he has a lot of attitude, but it's a very subtle thing, and it's a very modest thing in terms of the timing I tried for in the animation and in some of his poses and his demeanor. He is a hitman, so he's not really frightened by this mad scientist. He has a sense of confidence that I bring that out, I guess, in the characterization, in the performance.
Yeah.
If you're asking about character in the writing of things, I mean, really, he's a damaged character that, for me, is trying to either find to be reunited with his lost love, or if you don't want to be that literal, he's trying to just find some sense of happiness, some sense of escape, right? And that is in part sort of explains the relationship with that substance, that mysterious pink substance that he's drinking.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, what you said, if you wanted this character to be confident and also, interact with the mad scientist in a way, you brought that through in the actual animation and how he's standing, in the timing, because, I'd be tempted to write a line that makes him sound confident or, an interaction between, dialogue, which you don't even use in the film. Well, I mean, there's some, I don't know, what are they called? They're like film noir cards, I guess, like with writing on them.
Yeah, title cards, title cards.
Title cards from the silent era with dialogue on it for like the very, very simple things.
Even
So
though there's sound in the film.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's interesting that you played with timing and posing and things to convey, the characters in such a simple way. That makes a lot of sense to me. Um,
I had to, as a guy that's wearing so many hats, when making the film. So I tackled everything on it except for the music. I definitely know my limits, and I wanted to have, I really wanted to have nice sound, and I'm really happy. Mike Hamilton, a musician, Mike Treblecock did the music for it, and he's a professional musician. He scores a lot of horror films. So it was great to work with him, and Emmy Pasternostro did the sound mix on it. So I let the professionals handle the sound, but I had so many of the other aspects I was going to be in charge of that things like animation then became really important with things like posing and really effective direct animation that I knew I couldn't lose myself in like Disney quality full animation on ones. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of animator, and I wanted to make a film. I didn't want to sink into really like juicy animation. I wanted to finish the film.
right.
So for me, it has to be direct. It has to be purposeful and strong posing, and kind of get in and get out, and get the story across as effectively as possible, because there's just so much work to do when you're doing so many things on a short film.
Totally, yeah. And 8 minutes of a short film entirely produced, except for the sound and music and whatnot, by one person. That's, of course, you can't do animation on once. So, maybe let's dive into your process a little bit. How long did this film take you from start to completion? And I know you kind of did it during COVID, but did you start before COVID, or once COVID happened and you were, locked in your house?
It really was, I have to say, it really was a big component was COVID lockdown. Like I said, that the sort of the central images I think have been rattling around for a long time. But really, yeah, it was COVID, and playing with the idea too for quite a while of sort of magical substances, I think is really interesting. Like, call them drugs for lack of a better word, but substances that can transform us and that can change us, can evolve us. It's such a really interesting sort of story element to play with. So that had rattled around for quite a while as well. But yeah, it was 100% COVID, I have to say. I really got locked down, right? Like we all did, but I also happened to have a little space here at home, my little, I don't know what it is, 10 by 12 foot little studio room that I'm really fortunate to have. But it's not a lot of space, but it's enough to get your head around. If you want to do a project, you work to your constraints, right? And so yeah, it was 100% COVID, and it became something that for me was actually like, I really found a way to enjoy the process on it in a way that I haven't with earlier projects. And by that I mean, I don't know whether it's just like getting older, and having made more projects now for myself, that you kind of evolve in how you deal with your own projects, or whether it was COVID. But I really enjoyed every process in a way that I normally, if you're making something and you've got to do a lot of aspects of it, like sets and props and puppets and animation, I often am racing to get through to the next stage. And then I'm racing to get through the next stage because you want to get it done. You want to get the film done. And that's the important thing. For me with COVID, and sorry, I meant to say Orchid and COVID. Throughout COVID, though, working on it, I really sunk into it. And when I was making a puppet, I said to myself, man, I am going to enjoy making this puppet. And I know it sounds corny, but I just was able to focus on that little hand, or that little sculpture, and really take pleasure in it. Like, I think it's really easy. We get really busy as artists, and especially if you're working commercially, like, for sure, that's a whole other thing. Don't get me wrong. But if you're making something for yourself or an independent project, to find actual pleasure in every step of it, it's important, and it makes it pleasurable. But I think COVID had a part of that, because it kind of made me slow down and made me sort of sink in a way that I maybe wouldn't have otherwise.
That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned you only have a 10 by 12 foot space that you made this in, but the sets, you have multiple sets. They're highly detailed. I would have never imagined it was made in a 10 to 12 foot space. Besides, having COVID, how long did this actually take you to craft and animate? Was it the entire year or?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good amount of way to kind of bracket it or to try to give a shape to how long it took. I mean, like I
Yeah.
said, I think it's brewed for a long time, and but I think, yeah, let's call it a year, from hashing out the story into the designs and then fabrication and then animation. Yeah, I had sort of planned it where I had a stretch of time, that I knew I would have for animation that was pretty clear. I would have some time off in a summer throughout this, and that's really then the focus for what animation time was, because that really did that was the most time consuming stage, obviously. Even though I say my animation's like very limited, it's still clearly, you
Yeah.
got to set up, you still have a lot of time you got to dedicate. So I kind of framed everything around a chunk of time where I would be able to dedicate to animation,
Gotcha.
and
That
yeah,
makes
call it
sense.
here.
The luxuries of having summer off.
Well,
Um,
you have summer off in some ways, I guess, as a teacher, at least from your job. But I got two kids, and I've got a family, and lots of commitments in general. My dad's elderly, and lots of life stuff as well. I think that doing work like this, even if it's not for a client, and if it's for myself, I think that it's for me, but it's also for an audience, and it doesn't exist, right? Like, this stuff doesn't exist unless you make it, and I think
right.
that kind of fueled me as well. It's like,
Yeah.
it's worth doing because it is something special that literally doesn't exist, but now it exists. And again, I know that sounds like overly simple, but I think there's something really powerful in that for independent artists to always tell ourselves, like, we're making stuff that doesn't exist, and now it exists. That's kind of magic.
No, I relate to that a lot. There's imagery in my head that at some point I'm going to have to make because I just have to because it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
You said you were trying to really enjoy this project and focus on the details and make sure you enjoyed it. But, working full time, and then you mentioned you have a whole bunch of other commitments. Did you find this stressful to produce? Because, having a family, working, taking care of your dad, life, and then, you've got the summer coming up where you have some time to animate and you haven't finished making that set yet. Like, were you pushing yourself a lot and creating some stress for yourself in this situation too? Or was it a completely, it was a dream?
Yeah. Yeah, no. I have in the past made stuff, even though if it's a independent with my own sort of deadlines, where I really stress out about trying to get something done. But in this case, no, I really kind of forgave myself in that way. Like, I said to myself, it's okay. There's no, let's be honest, like, you gotta what would I say? Like, when you don't have a client, or if it's not a commercial project that has like an externally imposed deadline, you better enjoy it, man. Like, if you're
Yeah.
gonna still make something, then enjoy it, because otherwise, what the hell are you doing? Like, it should be enjoyable if you have that luxury, if you want to call it that. So no, I did not. I was gentle on myself, and some days I would only touch it a bit, right? Like, I would put one coat of paint on one little prop, and if that was all I could get done that day, hey, that's progress. And I've learned over the years of making stuff that, like, if you have kids, if you've got family, if you've got a job, if you've got all kinds of commitments, any progress is progress, and you should be proud of it. And there'll be days when you can have a ton of progress, and there'll be other days where maybe you don't have any. But any progress is good. So no, I was easy, and I was gentle on myself that way.
So then what was the most challenging part of of producing this film? Because I'm just amazed that it's over 8 minutes and it took you about a year to make. I can't imagine doing that myself.
Well, I have to say, I can't imagine it either
Just
outside of a
ended up
global
8 minutes.
pandemic. Out of a global pandemic, I don't know if I can imagine it either. it was a real escape for me as well, I
Mm.
think. So like I wanted to be in this world. You know what I mean? Like in a lot of ways, I don't know, many of us wanted to be out in the real world during COVID. So I maybe sunk myself more into it than I would have without the
Gotcha.
pandemic, right? If I attempted something like this again, I don't know. I think it would take me a lot longer, and I don't know how it would go. I don't know whether I'd finish it. So COVID again. I'm not saying thanks COVID. I'm just saying, yeah, I think it's a real product of its time.
Gotcha. I mean, it makes a
This
lot of sense.
particular film, yeah.
You took advantage of a very unique and terrible opportunity, I guess. I'm wondering also, I've set up, my bedroom is a stop motion studio as well, and I've bought lights and stuff, and I have a table and tripods and things. What does your home setup look like? I'm just curious because you've got some really cool mood lighting in this, and the sets look pretty big, I think. I mean, I don't know how big the character is, but they look quite impressive to me. So like what does your setup look like exactly?
It is bare bones, man, and
Yeah.
I don't
Like
make
how many
any
lights do you have?
apologies. Yeah, like in my book, I spend a lot of time sort of trying to emphasize to the reader, like especially if someone's on a budget, it is what you do with those simple tools and those
Yeah.
simple lights that is a lot more important than the lights themselves. Don't get me wrong, I love tech and I love fancy equipment, and anytime I can get into a professional studio, I drool because there's just so much awesome stuff. But if that's not your reality, then that is not your reality. So I have very basic stuff. I do have a couple of LED banks. I think you recommended the brand actually, Terry.
Oh.
Thanks. Yeah, yeah, and I got those. I think I maybe even got the same ones that you had recommended.
Oh, I love them. Oh gosh, I can't think of what they're called right now.
Newer, is that the
Yeah,
brand?
newer. That's what that is.
Yeah. And I'm not getting any kickbacks if your listeners are wondering. I'm about Terry, but I'm not. Anyway,
I'm good.
I got those, but that's the fanciest thing. And even that these days, I mean, they're so affordable.
Yeah.
There's nothing really fancy about that. And then I have various lights that I can focus using things like black wrap, like cinefoil, just to
Hmm.
try to focus the light in, and other sorts of tricks with really simple like bargain basement solutions, bits of cardboard and stuff like that to shape the light. And yeah, very very simple. Same with the materials for set making. Like it's all dollar store foam core.
Interesting. Because at Sheridan, the stop motion studio, you can work with silicone, you've got expensive armature stuff, you've got a welding machine, like all this fancy stuff. But for your personal short film, you just went to the dollar store and you're like, I'm gonna grab some wire and some foam core
Yeah, man, that's the fun thing. Like that to me, at least on this, like again, it's all different. Like if you're doing client work, like
yeah.
you know, a demanding client doesn't necessarily going to be satisfied with dollar store foam core, or maybe they will be. You just don't tell them you're using dollar store
I
foam core.
mean, based on what your film looks like, I would be. It doesn't look like foam core at all.
Say,
Um,
pocket that money.
yeah. So how much did you, if you don't mind sharing, like what was your budget for this film?
Oh, like I definitely spent the most on my music and sound
Yeah.
because they're professional artists, and I wanted those guys paid. Like usually, if I'm working with, if I'm gonna bring on another artist to work with me on something,
Yeah.
I'm really honest right up front, and I say like, I can pay you. I save my lunch money, or I have some money that I'll put aside for a project. I can pay you. It will be like indie film rates, and I will tell you up front what I can pay you. And if that doesn't work, I don't take any offense, but here's what I can do. And then I give folks a lot of freedom. And so often it's like, okay, the guy's paying me what he can. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. He's giving me lots of creative freedom. And in some cases, these are artists I've worked with quite a bit on other projects. So
Hmm.
there's a level of trust there and respect. So, I won't go into specifics, but I definitely spent the most on my music and sound because they deserved it. And for me, it was going to be on my own work. It's my own labor. And so really it would be my own labor that would be the expense, and I wasn't invoicing myself.
Maybe you
So
should for tax
yeah,
purposes.
yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, we should talk. You got some good accounting tips
I
there.
don't. If you have some, give them to me.
I do. If you want to talk accounting, I do. If you want to
All
put,
right. Well, then we should
yeah.
let's save that for another podcast. So maybe based on, setting up your studio and buying materials besides the music and sound, which work perfectly for your film, and you can easily tell that they were made for your film because key moments and things happen in the sound and animation at the same time. Did you have a budget for what you spent on, just setting up your home studio and buying materials for this film?
Well, the studio materials are stuff that I've sort of accumulated right over many years. So that's kind of hard to put a dollar value on that. But as far as materials go, so if you look at those puppets, what they are is Sculpey. There's some latex in some of the hands, like to make the skin. The armatures are like
skin of the skeleton.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, latex, and which is very affordable. And then those armatures, actually, I did put some. You can find some early pictures of those armatures on my Instagram, and they're really simple. They're like some of the simplest armatures I've ever made. But again, I knew what I needed the puppets to do, and I knew that those simple armatures. And again, I've learned that I think from teaching as well, right? Like I've worked with a lot of students and have had to work with them in ways that have affordable methods that can still give good results.
Yeah.
So I kept it. It's just the way it goes for me. I want to get the film made, and I'm not gonna compromise my family's future making my little my self-indulgent stop motion puppet films.
Yeah.
So they're just real cheap materials like I just laid out there. So we're talking like, honestly, it's hundreds of dollars, in the hundreds of dollars. It's not in the thousands. It's all in my labor, though, I have to say, and it's in, I guess, what I've accumulated in abilities and skills over the years, right? Like that's where it comes in. And it's a fun challenge. I love doing stuff. I'm never more proud of something than when it looks like $1 million and it cost me like $5. I'm really proud of myself. I'm really proud of myself when I can pull that off.
Yeah, for me, that's like part of being an artist, is to take just scrap and junk and turn it into something that looks like something that you would be impressed by.
Yes, that's real art. Yeah, that's real talent. I love it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you didn't break the bank by getting like super crazy armatures and molds and things. And that I think that's a testament to, like, a lot of people want to make a short film and they think it's super expensive and they want to try the most high-tech stuff. And that's great if you can, but I don't know, my personal style is to just take dollar store items and garbage and make something out of it.
Well, combined though too with your hard work and your dedication.
Well, of course, and professional equipment and cameras and lighting and whatever. So yeah. Now that this film has been out there and it's been a while since you made it, what was the overall goal? Was it to, scratch this itch of this image? Was it to create something for film festivals? Was it to create a piece to talk to in school? What was the goal of creating this film at the end of the day, when you started?
I wanted to make a film that would be entertaining and a story that would keep you wondering from shot to shot, from scene to scene, what's going to happen next. And I know that sounds really basic, but it was a challenge I set out for myself, because I'm not dissing any short films on the planet, because I know how hard everybody works to make stuff.
I'm sure we can a few.
Sometimes I feel like short animated films and maybe short stop motion films, they understandably rely a lot on how beautiful things are in terms of fabrication and in terms of textures and the art that's in front of your eyes on screen. And that sometimes maybe their stories are more focused on, say, atmosphere or mood, as opposed to the kind of storytelling that I find myself sometimes looking for, which is some of the, what's happening next. Why is that character doing that? Oh, that's why that character is doing that. And that leads us onward and onward through the story. So I wanted to make a story like that. I wanted to make something that people would keep watching and paying attention to, like legitimately paying attention to the story. That was really important to me. So I wanted to make that was entertaining, would keep people watching, and that would be like amusement. Sounds like such a trivial word sometimes, but I wanted to make an amusement film, like something that was fun to watch and that would be enjoyable. I didn't want to go too dark with it. I've made darker horror stuff in the past, but I wanted it to still feel sort of cartoony and fun. And then I wanted it to go to festivals and to be seen. And it's sitting there now on YouTube, and I'm hoping people will check it out and enjoy it. And I want people to watch it and enjoy it. I had a really nice comment. It played at a horror festival in Toronto recently, and someone on YouTube made a comment saying that they really liked it. They caught it at that festival and that they really enjoyed it. It's like, I don't know that person, but that person thought to make that comment, and that's what I want, right? I want that. I got to show it to an audience. COVID's made it hard with audiences to see stuff. So, and I couldn't get to Montreal. I played at the Montreal Festival, which was great. Thank you, but I couldn't get to see there. I was working, but I did show it to the third-year stop motion students this year at Sheridan. Nice. And they gave me a nice applause, and they had some interesting questions, and we kind of tied it to what we're doing in class. So that was nice. It also serves as, like, way back when, there was also an idea that it could serve as, like I said, I find that idea of well, drugs, very interesting, right? Like how they change us, even like, Tylenol, right? Like it changes us. Every coffee, right through to like weird pink substances that you drink and transforms you. So in my mind, this also could serve as like a one in a series or like one in an anthology of stories sort of connecting themselves by this sort of principle of this mysterious fuchsia pink liquid material. And it might be that's what's called Orchid. But that's all sort of behind
me. Because you can go anywhere with it. You don't, I mean, it sounds like you just want to make skeletons forever, but you don't have to do skeletons for the next one. What you said about, getting a comment on YouTube, like I absolutely love and live for those experiences where somebody out of the blue that you've never met or never connected with you just put something out into the world and they somehow stumbled across it and they had an experience and they give you some feedback. Like, to me, that's the ultimate, I don't know. It's just it's a high of experience as an artist. But, so your goal was to create something amusing and that entertains you from scene to scene, et cetera, et cetera. How would you evaluate that having happened now that it's finished?
Well, it's gotten positive feedback. It seems to go over well with audiences, and the parts that I hope would be funny seem to be funny for an audience, and the parts that are, I haven't, I'm not holding tightly to, I guess, in the same way that I was able to enjoy every stage of this, made me kind of say to myself, whoa, what's going on? Like, you're at a new point in how you make stuff if you're just enjoying the process. Wow, like that's pretty cool. So I went with that. I'm kind of feel the same way with it now being done. I'm proud of it. I'm proud that it's out there and that people can see it and enjoy it. And then that's kind of it, Terry. Like, I know we've talked, you and I, so much over time, and I know your efforts with development work and looking at building something into a bigger thing. And so that could happen with this, but I honestly, I've made it. I'm proud of it, and I'm really happy that it exists. Full stop. And yeah,
that sounds very pure, I guess. Even with the goal of just wanting to enjoy the process and then experiencing that. That sounds amazing to me because, like, a lot of the times when I'm creating something, there's another goal that I'm creating it for. Either it's work or it's a side project or something. And then at some point it becomes work and I'm not so much enjoying it. And then I have to rediscover, why am I doing this in the first place? And, that rediscovery is changing. It's either to work collaboratively with an amazing group of artists, and that's why I'm doing this, or, I'm doing this for work, or I'm doing this for a future payoff. with something else, or I'm doing this because it's a very long process and I have to push myself to do it if I want to get my own show or something. So just enjoying every bit of creating something sounds like an amazing goal, and it sounds like you achieved that. And what would it take for you to start that process again now that you've finished, you're back into teaching? COVID is hopefully over. We're entering into winter time, but what would it take for you to start this process again?
Well, I'll just, before I answer that, I have to say, like, I really do think you and I literally are at different places. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that's fair.
and I have, I'm not saying you don't have a job, Terry. I'm saying I have a kind of a job, and that kind of a job is it allows me routine. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
totally,
And
totally.
in that, I want to remain productive, and I want to, like, I see it as like, I won't say it's the obligation, but I feel obliged. Like, wow, that's an opportunity. You've got an opportunity to make stuff in this sort of way. Like, make it because you love to make it. Uh, so I want to honor that opportunity that I have. Do you know
Totally.
what I mean? I want to take advantage of that opportunity that I have. If someone saw this, but at the same time, I can sound very philosophical there. But if someone sees this film and wants to fund a feature film version of it, or wants to develop it into something more, I'm all ears, right? Because I can go that way as well with projects. If this wants to become something, I just currently am not really inclined to hustle it.
That's fair. That's fair. And when I was working in the business world, I was probably, I'm creative in my day to day now. I'm animating full time, which is amazing, but it's harder for me in my spare time to work on my own projects because, I feel a lot of creative fulfillment during the day. And then I reach some sort of exhaustion by the end of the day where I don't feel like working on my creative projects. But, I'm not saying the same with you, but as you were talking about, you have a routine and you have this opportunity. When I was working in my business job, I was using every spare moment of my spare time to create stuff, which is the kind of the opposite of what I'm doing now. So I definitely understand, being in a routine and having that job that's secure and allowing you, you clock out at whatever 5, 6 p.m. and then you have all the spare time to, have a dinner and then work on a cute project animation wise. It makes a lot of sense to me.
It's
Oh, sorry, go
yes, you
ahead.
nailed it. And you really do kind of draw out two different kinds of worlds there, and the way you compare it to when you were working in business, that's exactly right. That's how I sort of see it. There's like, if you've got creative impulses and creative energies, if they're coming out in your professional work and you're getting paid, then they're coming out, and that's a good thing, and you're getting paid to do it, and that gives you a whole sense of satisfaction and accomplishment and validation, right? Of like,
Yeah.
I knew I could do this. Despite, maybe if you've heard something otherwise, you're proving it to yourself with your paycheck that your creative abilities are allowing you to survive, and that's a really awesome thing. It then also uses up your creative energies, because that's what's happening. That's literally what's happening. If you're, I feel like I'm creative in my teaching, but it doesn't tap in when I was working commercially in stop motion. Just like you said, like, it does drain you. Of course it
Mhm.
does, right? In that way, in a way that I think teaching doesn't. It drains you in other ways, that's for sure. In terms of like outwardness, if you're introverted, it definitely draws a lot out of you because you're giving yourself out to students a lot. So in some ways, though, you can then come home and go inward. And if you go inward into making art, it's like, okay, then your creative impulses are still expressing themselves.
So, okay, so you kind of, your whole job, you live, eat, sleep animation, basically. Your job is to teach animation and history and all that stuff. And when you're not animating on projects of your own, do you feel that a super itch to produce something because you're basically talking about other people's animation all day?
Yeah, that's a part of it, I think, to be honest. I'm always working with these amazingly talented young artists that are coming
Mm.
up and that have so much creative energy and are expressing it through their assignments and through the work that they're doing. And yeah, for sure, I'm really inspired by what I see going on around me, and honestly, what I am teaching. Right. So if I've got something that I'm passionate about, and I like you've mentioned, I teach also at Sheridan. I teach animation history, and I love it. Right. Like I part of why I love it though is because it inspires me creatively. Like I take so much inspiration from it, and I sort of see it as fuel that yeah, in what I am teaching, I then definitely use that to sort of energize myself, and I don't golf, okay? Like I don't really know what hobbies are,
Oh
because
no.
my hobbies are what I am teaching and are what I'm creating in terms of films and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So sometimes people say, like, I don't know where you find the time, and I say, well, I don't kind of don't do anything else. Like
Yeah.
this is kind of what I do. So
Fair enough. Well, we've chatted about Orchid and where it came from and what it took to produce and inspiration, everything. Is there anything that we missed that you wanted to share with people listening?
I think I would just say, as I'm getting older as a human and as an artist and as a teacher as well, I find myself, I don't know if students can relate just because they are where they are, and I always am mindful of that. Like as a teacher, you're always getting older, going through different stages in life, but often you're teaching the same demographic, right? So
Yeah.
they're in some ways at a same stage. So I don't know if they can hear it when I say it to them, but I'm saying it to them more and more these days. And I don't go on at great lengths, but I do tell them, like, try to enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard, I know, as a student, but it's also hard when you're working commercially. And it's hard then if you're not working commercially and you got a family and you're trying to just like get something made, like one drawing or one bit
Yeah.
of, like, go easy on yourself, forgive yourself, be gentle on yourself, but also like be proud of yourself for anything that you make, anything that you create. It's a special thing that did not exist and now it exists. I think like students take it for granted and they're surrounded by other students that are so creative, and it just seems like, oh, I'm in a world where everybody's like this. But they're not like that, and you have like great gifts, and try to be in the moment with that gift. Like I used to work with a carpenter when I worked in live action, um, and live action film production carpentry, like he was a really good carpenter, but he had to make stuff that just looks good on the surface, right? Like it's literally what you do with sets for film, right? Same with stop motion. But anyways, he and I were working one day, and he made me stop, and he said, hold on, before we rush on to the next thing, let's stop and take a look at what we just made. And I was like, okay, whatever, yeah, we're looking at it, okay. He said, no, look at it and realize that that is a thing of beauty. He literally did this and stopped and looked at his work, and I thought, you're crazy, man. You're smoking too much pot on your lunch break. But he was right, and I live by it to this day. And I think it's really important to look at what you do and see it as a thing of beauty. That's it,
Uh,
Terry. I'm going out on that.
oh, I love that. And I went through the Sheridan experience a couple of years ago, and especially in first and second year, you're just stressing and rushing to get all your assignments done. And a lot of people aren't enjoying it. They're putting things off, they're spending all nights, they're, just having anxiety over it. And it's really tough to see. I I also tried to, enjoy and put my love into every piece that I made at Sheridan, but it's really tough when you're in an atmosphere with deadlines and marks and there's not really competition, but you feel like it's competition because everybody's super talented. So, I very much appreciate what you just said, and I'm glad that you're telling students that as well, because you're in school, you're in a bubble, and you should enjoy that more than when you're in the real world when things actually matter.
But I know, and I was there too when I was a student, and I know they can't I hope that they'll maybe
Yeah.
remember it in 10, 15 years. Maybe it'll be that thing that'll come up then, because I know where they're at. I really do. But
Just
yeah.
one of life's lessons you only learn when you're older, and you wish you could go switch your life around and do it the other way.
Well, we have what we have.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to share as we're wrapping up, Chris?
No, you keep asking me that, and I love the sound of
I
it.
only
Thank you
asked
so
you
much.
once.
Yeah,
You already
you
said I'm ending on this. All right, well let's cut it
uh,
off here then. Chris, it's I super enjoyed watching your film, picking your brain about it, and seeing some of the behind the scenes and how it's developed over time. I think it's really cool, and I'm really excited that you produced a film again. This is I think it's really exciting. I've watched all your work over the years, and uh, I just feel like you're upping your game every time you make something. So it's can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks, Terry. That's really nice of you to say that. That means a lot to me. You bring so much passion and hard work and talent to what you do, and you've been an inspiration as well. Teachers look to students as well to be energized and to be reminded that this kind of work is important, and that there's like the new crew, the new breed coming up that's got passion and talent. And that's definitely been you, man. So thanks to you.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a two-way street. You pushed me to make the Silly Duck Wizard in the first place. So if you didn't push me to make that, I wouldn't be where I was now, to be honest. So
It gets passed onward and onward, man. I had
yeah,
teachers like that back in the day that did the same, same sorts of things, right? Where you get that kind of support, and it really does matter. So you just make sure you keep passing it on too.
I'm trying. This podcast is one of the ways that I try to do that. So
All right. All right.
all right, Chris. Well, thank you so much. And if you're listening and you want to check out Orchid, I'm going to post the link to the YouTube in the description of this chat, as well as Chris's website, so you can check out his other work. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, bye.
The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.